introduce yourself to get us started, please?
Hi, certainly. I'm Iain Williams. I'm Director of Strategic Partnerships at NERC, the Natural Environment Research Council, part of UKRI. What that means is I'm responsible for all our long-term investments, largely through our 6 research centres, but also some longer-term investments with the university sector as well. I'm also responsible for our infrastructure and particularly our future infrastructure. So what are the next big research facilities that the environmental science community need to do its research? And I'm also responsible for our digital programs as well. That's our digital infrastructure, our data programs, and our digital research as well.
In your role as Deputy Chief Scientific Advisor at DEFRA, you were involved in shaping science and research strategy. How can researchers make their work useful in this kind of policy context?
The first thing, I want to take that back a little bit, first of all. And when you talk about policy context, that can mean an awful lot of things to an awful lot of different people. And it's just worth spending a little bit of time to think about what we mean by policy context first, because we can talk about directly informing new policies. And that's a really good thing to be involved in. But also just as important is how we implement existing policies. And that's really important to government departments as well. And the reason I want to take it back to that is because it's really important that we understand what part of that landscape you're influencing, to know whether you're speaking to the right people, because communicating science is the same as communicating anything. It's really important you know your audience, and you need to know whether you're speaking to the right people who are going to be receptive to what you're talking about. So if it's new policy, it's very much likely to be the Whitehall or equivalent government department. But if we're talking about how to implement an existing policy or in a sort of emergency response type mode, that could be a regulatory agency, for example, an agency of a government department, or in the emergency, it could be all of them, as it were, involved. So it's really important that before you even start talking about how am I going to influence policy, are you talking to the right people? Is this an existing policy? Is it a new policy? Of course, don't forget, a lot of policies, particularly in the environmental space, are devolved, and think about the devolved administrations as well. So that's the starting point. Before we start talking about communicating, are we talking about to the right people who we really need to influence?
How important, in your opinion, is networking and relationship building between researchers and policymakers?
Yeah, networking is really important, because policy teams need to know who the right people are to speak to in any one particular field. There's one thing I would say about networking. I spent 20 years in Whitehall, and I did 7 roles in that time. That's probably pretty average, and that means that people move. Everybody knows this around Whitehall, that people move a lot. So when you talk about networking, don't just think about who is the person I need to speak to in this department to influence this. If you really want to make progress and really want to develop networks, the key is the word network. And again, probably in most cases, you'll want to make those networks not just in the policy department, but very often in a regulatory or arm's length body part of the government as well. So you have that full chain of delivery, as well as not too dependent on any relationship with any one individual, because people do move around a lot. That's important.
What avenues or platforms would you recommend for researchers who are looking to engage with policymakers, and how can they make the best use of these opportunities?
Think about where your research could fit very well, but also build your networks and your connections yourself, as it were. And I think that's really important. And I think looking at it from the other way, the government itself looks to engage a lot with the research community. When I was Deputy Chief Scientific Advisor at DEFRA, I introduced a programme where we seconded academics into the department to work alongside our science teams and our policy teams within the department. So we keep a lookout for opportunities like those. And of course, getting engaged in government's Science Advisory Committee network. Government really uses a lot of scientific advisory committees in all sorts of ways. So it's worth looking at those and see where there are opportunities for you to get involved with your particular research, because they're a great opportunity to start your engagement with government through those advisory committees.